So you had a few challenges joining us, is that right?
That is correct.
But you're here now, which is where we were just having a conversation about what time it is there.
It is 9:03.
Okay.
So morning. So
Yeah.
good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon, and I'll get going because we've got lots of people on the call already, which is lovely, and we'll have other people joining, no doubt. But can I welcome you, Pauline, to our group, and to say how delighted I am to see you, and to thank you for getting up and getting yourself ready to be beamed across the world in the way that you have. For us, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we're losing our daylight at the moment, and here in London it's a snowy day and it's very cold. So we were just debating what kind of weather you had in Colorado. So what sort of weather have you got?
Well, that is interesting because 2 days ago we were at 65 Fahrenheit. That's 18 Celsius. We had a low of 17 Fahrenheit. Well, that's close to a 9 Celsius. This morning I woke up and it's 12 Fahrenheit, 11 Celsius, minus 11 Celsius. Wow. And we'll be somewhere around 7 Celsius for the day. So it changes dramatically at times.
Yeah, I mean that's an incredible variation, but it's quite chilly where you are, but not perhaps not. We're about +2 or 3 Celsius. So anyway, let's talk about the weather. That's what English people, well, people like me anyway, do all the time, and it's not the interesting part of what we want to talk to you about. So, as I said, very big warm welcome to all of you, and I'd like you to start off, because what we do with these Super Trooper talks is it's a nice opportunity for us to meet people who've had interesting lives, because older women often have fascinating and amazing histories. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Pauline, about your life, where you've always where you've lived, why you ended up where you are now, and anything and everything that you want to tell us about your life story to start with before we come on to your bonsai.
Well, I have lived in Colorado most of my life. I was not born here, though. I was actually born in the upper south, the southwest corner, if you will, of the United States. And we had moved out here during World War II. My father thought this was the area, and he had family out here as well. And it ended up, the difference in where we lived and Colorado was very dry or semi-arid here. So this morning when I woke up, it was 80% humidity, and usually we have 30%. So we were not used to dryness, and my older sister and brother kept getting pneumonia and so on and so forth, and we ended up moving back. And then my dream was always to return to Colorado, which I did at the first opportunity. And then later on in life, I ended up marrying my late husband, and we lived for a while in Florida. And he thought he wanted to retire, and he became a different person. So I said, no, we're moving back here. So we moved back here, and here I am. And about 30 years ago, I went through midlife crises and ended up buying horses. Well, I grew up around horses, and we were living in a downtown area, Denver, which is the largest city in Colorado. And we moved out to a farm. And so I have a few remaining horses, a couple of big dogs, some barn cats, and myself. So there you are. It's a smaller acreage, although it's a little, we call it a ranchette, if you will. So I'm still here and still have dogs, cats, and horses. So
you told me when I first talked to you some weeks ago that you bought a mare in foal, and you kind of went home to your husband. Is that right? And said, "I've bought a mare in foal."
And my husband said, "What's a foal?" That's about he was a city boy, so he no clue. And I said, no, we have a baby horse coming. So I said, we have to find a farm. And by that time, I had 2 horses already. And I have no clue why I bought this mare, except she and I had that unusual connection that if you're horse people, you would understand. And we seem to communicate on an incredible level. So I've been fortunate to have that happen with horses and dogs. So it was very special to me and a very special part of life. And then about 6 years ago, I wondered what in the world I would get with or for my youngest grandson for his birthday. So I went to his mother and I said, you know, because I knew they all had plans, and she has this wonderful green thumb. So I said, Lori, what shall I get Alex for birthday? I'm thinking of a bonsai class. And she said, I think that would be spectacular. So he and I met. I got on the phone and I called a couple of places. Well, I actually was taken with the first place. It was Colorado Bonsai. And it's Harold and Marcia Sasaki. And Marcia was very, very accommodating. And she went out of her way to make sure that we could set up a proper time and so forth. So we got there, we met Harold, her husband, and we didn't know at the time, he's an international bonsai master. And he trained some of the international masters themselves, but he likes getting people started. And we have forged a wonderful relationship since then. My grandson was in college and his specialty was plant DNA. And I barely had a green thumb. In fact, I don't think I did have one, as the expression goes. And so he ended up doing something else, although he's got bonsai plants. But I became, especially the last 2 years, I have become very, very, I wouldn't say addicted, but I've become very, very involved. And I'm trying very, very hard to learn the science and the art behind it. And actually the essence of it, if you will. It's quite an undertaking. And as Mr. Sasaki or Master Sasaki says, he's been involved since somewhere in his teenage years, and he's still learning. So maybe in 10, 15 years, I'll know something. So I am definitely an amateur.
Okay, so I think that's very Japanese in concept that you start in your teenage years, but you're still learning years and years and years later. So it's a lovely idea. So Pauline, for those people like me who are listening to you, can you just tell me quite simply what bonsai actually is?
Bonsai actually started in China, but I think it became perfected in Japan. And if somebody disagrees, please, I would bow to you. But that is my feeling, that it became perfected there. And it actually means tree in small pots. That is elementary explanation, and you can get into a greater degree of it. But that's the simpler version of it.
Okay, so your simple description is trees in small pots, and the whole process of bonsai is the miniaturization. Is that right? So you end up with, do you end up with a perfect miniature of certain different trees? How does it work? Explain to me how it happens.
You could call it a miniature, but the true bonsai enthusiast or artist, if you will, they're a little careful about using that. But I would say on a street level, that's proper.
Yes, I mean, you have to keep it to street level for me, honestly, Pauline. Simple, better, you know, because I really don't understand complexity. I'm sure you now know, you know, having followed this for some time, that it's an art and a skill that's enormously complex. But you know, we're talking to a simple person here, in for me anyway. So are you going to show us some examples? Is that how you're going to do it? Would you like to show us some of the bonsai that you have? How many do you have?
I have, well, I've increased a couple. I had about 30 when we earlier spoke, and I just ordered several pre-bonsai and seedlings from an area in the Midwest. So I'm delving into what area or what type of plants are best for me and my environment. And I tend to go towards some of the exotics, the sarissas, and some of the bush cherries, as an example. I just picked up one. But then I thought, maybe I should go back to the deciduous. So I ordered several trident maples, which are wonderful. Also, we have the native evergreens here, and they are in pots that are buried in the ground out in my yard. You would call it garden, we call them yards. And they are there for the winter. So there will be overwintering there. The one that I have here is a Schefflera. And is that a good vision of it?
Yes, that's a good, we can see that very clearly. Yeah.
And a Scheffel, you can see where it has wiring in it. And that's a training device. There are 3 or 4 different training devices that we use. Train it into a particular art or shape.
Right.
And this one, I've had this for quite a long while. And you train this, and I can't do it with one hand because one must have 2. But if I wanted this branch to come down, I would do so by training it to come down. I actually want to cover up a space here. So therefore, that's one of the training tools. The other one that I have here, and I do tend to like the canopy types. This I picked up a few years ago at actually our bonsai show at the Denver Botanic Garden. And this is, it's called a parrot's beak, because when it blooms, and this one has not bloomed, but when it blooms, the blooms look like a parrot's beak. And I will not attempt to tell you what its scientific name is. Probably botch it up. But the other thing,
Pauline, can I just ask you a question? You said when it blooms. So what color would the blooms be that are the shape of a parrot's beak?
You know, the ones I have seen, since it has not bloomed for me, the ones I've seen are a yellow, yellow color. That, whether that would be the case or whether this one would have a different color. I've seen them as red as well. So, but again, this one has not bloomed yet. The sarissas that I have wonderful white, tiny blooms. They call them 1,000. I'd hope to have it. They call them 1,000 stars on the plant. But the other reason I wanted to share this with you is because see all of the rocks at the bottom?
Yeah.
In this place in the United States, we have lots of petrified wood. So let me show you what a piece of petrified wood looks like.
Okay. So that's wood that's turned into stone, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So it started off as wood, and over time it has petrified, which means that it's become stone.
Yes, indeed. So, and we use different things to create more artistic. As I learn more about this, I will learn how to do moss. Moss is difficult in Colorado because of our dryness, but you will often see in bonsai where the pots are full of beautiful moss.
Right.
And I will, that's one of the arts I need to learn. So that is on the agenda. So,
Okay.
and can be done.
There's lots of questions coming into my mind about that. So the one that you've just shown us there, when you first got that, what form was it in? Did you grow it from scratch or seed, or how did it start, or did you just get a smaller version of that? I don't understand how.
I beg your pardon. This is actually what I bought. The pots as well. And I added the stones because I found them interesting. And the roots on the back, you will see, are starting to come up out of the soil. So I will need to do some amending this spring on it. Whether I allow them to grow out further or not will be a decision I'll have to make.
Okay, so when you bought that, it was as we see it, and what you now have to do, you have to maintain it and make sure that you keep it in the right form and growth and so on and so forth. Is that how it works?
That is how it works, but I can also put it in training, and I can wire it so that the division here of the two divisions may spread further apart or not. It depends on what I wish to accomplish with this as far as an art form.
Okay, all right. So, and that's what you're always trying to do with this. You're trying to create beautiful plants that are shaped in a particularly satisfying and aesthetically pleasing way. Is that right?
That is true. I tend to like trees that follow a natural form. And again, I do like the canopy types. Although the Schefflera, this has been in different pots, and this was quite a bit smaller. And at one point in time, had bigger, thicker leaves on it. And serendipity, working with my grandson, it lost all of its leaves. We did something it didn't like, and I only had just a few left remaining. And I needed those for synthesizing the necessity of life, to make sure that that it had the chlorophyll that it needed. So it came back, and it came back in these very smaller leaves, and it's been very interesting to me. So and then we decided to change the shape of it a little bit as well. So we wired it accordingly. And again, I need to do a little bit more work on them. It seems like a never ending a challenge, if you will, to decide what you're going to do. And as the plant grows, you may move into a different realm with it.
So you said you've got about 30 trees at the moment in your collection. How much time would you say on a daily basis do you spend tending to them?
Oh, I would say I spend probably a good hour, but on the weekends, I tend to spend maybe all day on one or the other of them. Wintertime, they are mostly dormant, so you don't need to water as much. Just make sure that they are in good health. I have grow lights with most of them, so they get good light. Otherwise, they become leggy. And so that's hard to say, because it depends on the variety of tree too.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Are some more difficult than others, and perhaps more tender and delicate and need more care?
Yes, indeed. The tropicals do tend to need more care, and also they tend to bring in some of the insects and the crawly things that one doesn't really appreciate very much when you've got that many bonsai. So you have to be a little careful there. And I'm learning a lot about that. I conquer one and another one pops up. So
That's fantastic. And do you belong to some kind of group or club, or are you part of a wider community of people who are doing that in your area?
Indeed, it is one of the clubs here that I do belong to. Is Rocky Mountain Bonsai Society. It was started by a group of Japanese men during World War II, and we have branched out into many members in many different states. And on their website, they have a wealth of educational information. So it is well worth going into any of them. But on the international web, we have a wonderful amount of information available. So as an example, I had picked up a pinyon pine, and in popping up on the website, a gentleman out of London described the pinyon pine. So I watched his YouTube and learned a great deal about how he handled the pinyon pine. And that's more native in our area. So it was exciting to get that and hear about it.
That sounds fantastic. So it really is one of those passions and hobbies, if you like, that can put you in contact with people in lots of different places. Do you enter things like competitions?
There are some, especially in Japan, to be able to show in one of the shows there that they have is phenomenal. I mean, you have reached the ultimate if you're able to do that. So yes, there are. Locally, we show at the Denver Botanic Gardens, and that's also a wealth of information about bonsai. They have also a division there, if you will, in the Botanic Gardens, and many do throughout the United States and also in other parts of the world. So, and especially if you've ever been in Japan or China, their gardens are phenomenal. They are an inspiration in and of themselves.
So you've obviously been, is that right? Have you been to Japan and China, have you?
Yes, I have been. I'm being blessed to be able to travel as I have been able to. And very often here you will hear about some group that is going to Japan just to view the different bonsai and be guests of a master. So it's available, and I'm sure it's the same in England with the enthusiasts there as well, in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I love it when you've got some kind of passion or interest that actually then stimulates travel, because you want to go to the place and actually see. I have been to Japan briefly as part of my work, and it was cherry blossom time, so it was very, very beautiful and yeah, stunning. Really, really stunning. Lovely to see. Is your grandson still doing his bonsai?
He is still doing his bonsai. He's still also, he's in a realm differently. He was able to take something from a liquid form and grow it into a tree. And that's way beyond anything I know. So he's very much into that. He currently is, if you know kombucha, that is fermented tea, and he's in charge of the fermenting process for this particular company. Wow. So he's gone on to different levels, but he still has, and will come and coach me occasionally on mine. Grandma, you need to do this. Grandma, you need to do that. So
but that's fantastic. I love it, because to have an interest which you share with your grandson, that's really special, and he must love it that you're so involved in it as well. That must be a great pleasure for him too, I would imagine.
He and the Sasaki's, that Colorado Bonsai where we started, have maintained a good relationship as well. In fact, Mr. Harold Sasaki, or I should call him Master Sasaki, and he has forged such a relationship. He has adopted him as his grandson. So here's my 6'6" grandson, and Master Sasaki is a more traditional Japanese size. So they're much fun to be around.
I can imagine. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and you know, congratulations on. You've been. Did you say you've been doing it for about 6 years?
Yes, we started about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I became more serious about it the last 2 years.
Yeah, but you know, in 6 years, it's a very indelicate question, but you know, we're all in the same boat. So, how old were you when you started doing it?
Oh, let's see, that was 6 years ago. Oh, I was 74.
74. So you're 80 now.
I will be 80 in December this year.
Okay, well, that's absolutely wonderful. So you took up a completely new hobby at the age of 74, and you know, and have obviously done it incredibly successfully to the point where I'm sure you're impressing your grandson no end, and it's given you a whole new outlook on life and opportunity to travel and so on. So what a fantastic story. I mean, I just love it. It's like, it's brilliant.
Well, thank you. And meanwhile, what you are doing is phenomenal. So thank you as well.
Oh,
Besides the wonderful makeup, the extras that you are doing. And if I may just add that for people who are in confinement, there's nothing like getting your hands in the soil. There's something about Mother Earth
mhm.
that is very healing. So I would encourage anybody to give it a try. And don't feel bad if if you kill a few, then the masters do.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
That's good advice. Don't worry too much if you lose a few on the way. I think what you just said there is so true. I think the first lockdown that we had, which was back in March, we were coming into the spring, and we were then coming into the summer. And I think for a lot of people, it was actually fantastic timing from the point of view of being able to get out into the garden. And I know a lot of people spent a lot of the first lockdown gardening, and the pleasure of being outside and being able to grow things and make things happen, you know, especially in the dire situation we were in. Unfortunately, this lockdown that we've been in has been entirely in the winter, and I think that it's been a lot harder because you can't go outside, and you can't enjoy watching things grow. Although the snowdrops are out here at the moment, so that's actually quite nice. But you're absolutely right. There's something about the soil and having things grow and nurturing things in the way that you do must be incredibly satisfying. So it's really lovely. So let's go to Bryony for some questions.
Okay, so we've had lots of questions. So one question from Monica was, is it only trees that can be used, or can you use shrubs? Are shrubs suitable too?
what has become popular with the Rocky Mountain Bonsai Society, I've noticed, whether it's new or whether it's continuing, that I don't know. But we're doing boxwoods, and I've got 2 boxwoods as well that I'm working on, and they're shrubs.
Okay. So you can use shrubs.
Yes.
That's great. And in the autumn, do you end up with lots of dropped leaves? So do all the leaves fall off in the autumn?
Not so many with what I've got, because I put them under grow lights. But deciduous trees, yes, they will turn their autumn colors. And the trident maples, as an example that I have ordered, they will turn their autumn colors and then may drop them depending on the light source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And Dorothy wants to know, do you keep all of the bonsai indoors, or can they go outdoors too?
Some of mine are buried outside. So the junipers, the pines, they're in their pots, and we bury the pots. And then I put bales of straw around, because we have very high dry winds, because dry winds will hurt those roots. Again, remember, the pot is very small and narrow. So the root system can be frail, if you will. They're also very strong, but they can be frail depending on the conditions.
Okay, so when you say that you have them outside, do you put the pots underground and soil on top? Is that how it works?
Yes, you sink the pots into the ground, and the rims will show. And then I have lots of pine needles, and they're wonderful, something to put on them to help keep them, or what would you say, we use them as a mulch. And they do very well. I have to check ever so often to make certain that they're not too dry and add water, but that doesn't happen often.
That's amazing. Jill would like to know, can you trim them into shape, or is it just the wiring that manipulates the shape of them?
There are many different ways that one train them, is the term they use, if I may. Wiring is one. Working with the roots and trimming the roots back can be another, or elongating them or whatever. Another one is trimming the trees into a certain shape. So there are many varieties of training.
Okay, and if you were to be to trim the leaves of the tree, how often would you need to trim them?
I've just learned that certainly in the deciduous trees, that to let them go ahead and sprout, because there is an interaction between the water system and the light going through up and down the trees, and I'm not sure I quite understand it. So this is so very elementary, forgive me for this, but I would not trim them until late into summer. And I have been known to trim mine also in fall, but it would depend on the tree as well, the variety.
Right, okay. And then one final question from Dorothy. She was wondering, when you first started with bonsai, did you have any idea how engrossed you would become?
No. No, I had no idea I would end up with 30 plus. That is small. Very often you'll find bonsai masters, enthusiasts have over 2,000 plus. So I have far to go.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll hand back to Tricia now.
Okay, so yeah, that was absolutely lovely, Pauline. We really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your story and your passion for bonsai, and congratulations on making such a success of a hobby that you started just 6 years ago. Quite a complex and complicated endeavor in lots of ways, but it's been an absolute delight talking to you, and thank you so much. So on behalf of the group, I'll say goodbye and thank you, and goodbye to everybody who's been listening to this. We always appreciate it when you come and join us, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Pauline. Bye bye, and bye bye everybody else.
Thank you to everyone. Bye bye.